Hi everyone! Today I'm going to talk about Nairobi with an urban planner hat in my head, and that's a hat that I have worn in my previous life. And I'm going to be talking about third places. I used to work in urban planning in cities and towns all over Finland, and I was also involved in some projects in Tbilisi, Georgia and Nanjing, China. I've also lived all my life in cities Helsinki, Wuhan, Beijing, and now Nairobi. So some of the stuff I'm about to say is literally what I used to get paid for, so listen carefully. No, but to be for real, although I do have experience, academic and professional, in the field of urban planning, the cities that I learned about and worked with were very different. In fact, Nairobi was used as an example of bad transportation planning during my studies, but that's like the only touch point that I have to cities like this. So if you feel like I'm missing some mark or not really understanding the context of this major African city that is also an international hub, but also has its challenges, just let me know in the comments. I'm so happy to learn about it. So let's go. I think third places are more commonly talked about in American urban planning discourse, probably because the majority of American cities are kind of lacking in these spaces. Third places are spaces that are considered separate from home, first places, and work, second places. So these can be parks, malls, cafes, community centers that foster social interaction and community engagement. So ideally a third place would be this kind of accessible, open community living room that doesn't require one to spend and consume a lot. So I think in Helsinki we do really good with third places, playgrounds, skate parks, free outdoor gyms. So for example, in summertime, I wouldn't really spend money to have a gym membership because I could just work out for free outdoors. Libraries that have a ton of different services, especially in the more like flagship libraries, you can literally borrow, I think these days even designer clothes, but like instruments, 3D printers you can use, sewing machines, like people do a lot of different projects, not just reading books. For just a couple of euros, one can enter swimming halls with saunas and, Olympic size swimming pools even. I think both in very like urban central areas as well as in the suburbs, it wouldn't take me that many minutes to find some type of a pocket park, a public free area where I could just do whatever I wish to do. And even national parks are actually free to enter. There's also been some initiatives for urban farming and communal gardens. And in one of the newer malls in Helsinki, there is a place that is literally called like a free town. It's a living room where you can enter for free, Wi-Fi is free. There's also very affordable courses. How do you call it? It's like a working class type of center that offers courses in all kinds of areas. It can be languages, it can be digital skills. You would maybe find elderly people in those classes most often. Cooking some, trending dishes. I used to live close to this old slaughterhouse that was then, made into this trendy area with all kinds of restaurants. But in summer, if you take, your own food and stuff, you will be allowed to barbecue there. They have everything you need. We also have some like guerrilla saunas that you don't have to pay anything to enter. And it's really just sustained by people who voluntarily chop the wood and heat up the sauna and take care of everything there. I'm not sure how Helsinki compares to maybe other cities in Europe, but I'm under the impression that there's quite a low barrier to have the permits to organize events in public spaces. I have heard that, for example, in Nairobi and certainly in Chinese cities, it can be a bit of an issue. Like even if you have the required permit, the police may show up and make your life difficult. And this, of course, further increases the threshold to have these communal events in public spaces. Next, I'm gonna go through what I have observed to be the third spaces in Nairobi, and many of these places you can also find in my map, Nairobi by theainoluo. I will link it in the description if you are somebody looking for places and spaces and what to do living or visiting this city. So first we have malls, which of course are spaces for social interaction, having good food, shopping, going to see a movie, hanging out in fast food joints, whatever, but also heavily focused on consumption. So you would have a hard time finding a place to sit down, for example, if you are not ready to spend some money. By the way, I find it quite interesting that many fast food joints, if you actually look at their business model, they are not really restaurants, but they are more so property businesses. There are also many nice cafes in Nairobi, maybe not that many like, you know, cozy, cute, small indoor cafes, but more so like big, wonderful like outdoor spaces and gardens. One of my favorite examples would be Palette Cafe, because they have a lot of small like businesses like Green Thing Kenya, some local fashion, and actually they also hire hearing impaired people, so they also have that social cause going on. Another one, more like a restaurant, would be Bao Box. They do like encourage people to stay longer. They have a lot of board games, they have karaoke, they have a lot of things going on. So yeah, you do consume, but you are also encouraged to like connect with people and engage. There's also many nice parks. Some of them do have an entry fee. In Arboretum, I need to pay the tourist price, even though I am a tax-paying resident in Kenya, which I think I should be getting the resident price, but nope. So yeah, these are wonderful, beautiful parks, but you know, not something that you can just like casually access. There are also some free parks, for example, the one with the National Museum, and then there's a city park. Then there's gyms. Personally, I find gyms in Nairobi to be really overpriced, kind of like a luxury. But the good thing is that I've heard that these high-end gyms, they tend to also have a lot of like group activities. Like you can really like build a community. Then of course you can take a dance hobby at Empire Dance Kenya, for example. That's my favorite. But there are also some freely accessible sports fields. So yeah, many people do go there to have a walk or a run. I've also found bookstores that try to be a bit communal. For example, Somanami. They do have a book club, and I've seen on Instagram that there's a lot of people who are part of the book club. If I'm not wrong, they also focus a bit more on like African and maybe like women's literature, like written by women, I mean. So that's for sure a space where you can, you know, build a community, you read the same book, you discuss it, and I think that's wonderful. Then some very specific ones that I found in Nairobi. There's this funny concept of a car wash combined with a bar. I don't know who came up with that. I don't know if it's a very safe way of thinking. Like, I don't think you should be drinking if you're gonna drive that car off. So yeah, I've seen many places that maybe started as a car wash and then later a bar opened up there, and some of these spaces, let's say for example a Gecko car wash, has, you know, become a really big thing. There's a lot of live music going on. Kibandas, these street kiosks where people stop for lunch, they could probably become kind of third spaces. Let's say you maybe work somewhere nearby and every day you go at lunchtime to the same kibanda, and yeah, you probably end up meeting the same people and engaging with them. Then of course we have ghettos, as people here call them. I've learned to call them slums through my education, but anyways, you guys understand what type of areas I mean. And there, of course, much of the life and interaction and third spacey things happen just there on the street. And this is not actually a bad thing. I actually really enjoy the human scale of these areas. I find it very, you know, vibrant, and there tends to be a sense of community, and there are lots of chances for interaction with other people. Oh yeah, and then church. Church for sure is a very big thing for many people here. Many people here also do some kind of volunteer work. The volunteer workspace can end up being a third space for you. It's not difficult to find different organizations here in Nairobi. There are so many, but there are, for example, communities like Internations for immigrants and expats that tend to have events specifically for this purpose. I also see a lot of ads on Instagram of free or very affordable events. For example, stand-up comedy in a bar.
Kenya power, black is beautiful.
There's also these different international like institutions. I do not know French, so forgive me if I butcher this pronunciation. Alliance Française. The French thing, they have movies and concerts and stuff, and I think those are even sometimes free, and that of course provides a whole other opportunity for cultural exchange. For maybe a year already there's also been this Sunday street dance going on in town. I know because I go to Empire Dance Kenya and they are one of the groups organizing that, but that's a completely free thing, and it's grown pretty big. Like there's a lot of dancers who get together learning choreos, doing TikTok videos and such. And then we have spaces that serve multiple purposes. So let's say for example Nairobi Street Kitchen. So there are restaurants, there's bars, there's nightlife, there's sometimes these like shopping pop-up events. Our Wonder House that has all of these more maybe conscious events. It's a very wonderful space, beautiful garden where people can take the initiative and organize their own events. Provisions Kenya that serves as a cafe, but also a shop for different kinds of local and maybe more sustainable products. But they also are an event space. I've seen there's been henna workshops, writing clubs, and yoga and things like this. So why are third places important? For me, the first thing that comes to mind is that they tend to give especially young people the space to gain some independence and freedom to, you know, meet their friends, explore in like safe contexts. I know that in some countries these like after school like clubs are a big thing. Is that the case in Kenya? You can tell me in the comments. I used to live in this compound before in Kenya where a teenage boy had a motorbike or scooter, I don't know, I never really checked what it was. But he was driving around and like he was kind of confined in the compound. And when I think of a similar age boy in Helsinki, they would probably have access to some kind of a bike park and they would feel safe to go there by themselves, and you know, it would not be as restricted. And this of course also relates to the walkability of the city. Nairobi is quite a car-centered city that is occupying a very large area, so if you do not have access to a car, you're lower income, you're young, you're elderly, it can be a bit tricky to get around. Third spaces can also really help to foster this sense of community for different kinds of groups. Let's say the elderly who are often very attached to the area where they live. And I'm thinking things, for example, like dating. So I used to work mainly in participatory planning, where we would develop areas based on community engagement, trying to make areas feel safer for women or more accessible to people with mobility issues or immigrants. So this would ensure that the development initiatives would also consider the unique preferences, knowledge and needs of different groups of people. And one main difference that I think probably very heavily influences urban planning between, let's say, Nairobi and Helsinki is that in Helsinki there's a lot of public space owned by the city. So, you know, it's quite a lot easier to develop a city like that, whereas, you know, if every plot of land is privately owned. And it also tends to create a less walkable environment, because if every piece of land is fenced, you know, you have to go around a lot to get to where you need to be. So yeah, when we enhance public spaces, they tend to become more vibrant and people-centric, and they can help to preserve communities, even cultural heritage. And I think we can all see when we look at, for example, financial districts all over the world, they are often kind of carbon copies of each other. Like there's nothing really cultural or unique going on there. When it comes to social activities and community building, of course, these days we can't ignore internet. Internet is also a space where especially the younger generations really get together, but it is a very different kind of community than a face-to-face physical one. So the issue that I personally see from my perspective in Nairobi is that there tends to be quite a high cost barrier to enter different kinds of third spaces and engage in social activities. And this of course is an issue from social equity perspective when different income groups can't like get together in same spaces. engage with each other, exchange ideas with each other. I know that many people here in Nairobi, they have never stepped a foot in some of the most popular malls because there is nothing in the mall that is cost accessible for them. And honestly, they would probably be stopped by the security even at the point of entering. So when I compare to places like Finland, for example, the idea there is to mix people from different income groups so that they can live, work, and do their third space things in the same neighborhoods. And I feel like this is one way you can start building trust between different kinds of people using urban planning methods. And the lack of this connection, I feel it hurts both the higher and lower income groups because, if you're in the higher income bracket, you cage yourself in these leafy neighborhoods, you have your tinted windows in your car, you move from one space to another, you don't enter the downtown. And then on the other hand, Nairobi is a wonderful city with so many different things like amazing cuisine, fun, trendy activities like, paint and sip or stand up or whatever. And a lot of the people here never get to enjoy all that the city has to offer. And there was a point in time when I was struggling with my finances living here in Nairobi, and I was kind of awkwardly stuck in the middle. Like, I had to skip many activities that my reference group of white expats were doing because I had to save my money. But I also didn't really feel comfortable in hanging out in spaces that I could afford because, people saw me like I don't belong there. And I think it's probably a bit inevitable, but a bit problematic if your social life becomes dependent on your purchasing power. So yeah, these are my observations of the third spaces in Nairobi, and there's many of them. There's a lot to do here for sure outside of just home and work, but there are certainly some challenges such as the accessibility, especially cost accessibility of some of these spaces. But I would be really curious to hear what would be your favorite third space, either in Nairobi or in your own city. And yeah, let me know also if you would like to put this imaginary urban planner hat on more often when I talk about Nairobi. It's a very, very interesting different context for me also to live in because Helsinki and Wuhan were definitely quite different places. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Give it a like, maybe a subscribe if you really liked it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!